So, as I've talked about here on my channel in the web recommendations of a lot of stories that you can find at patreon.com, as not DeviantArt, Furfinient, and Ink Bunny and all that. One of them that I talked about recently was Jovian16's Amanda and Nicole. That's Jovian 16 at Patreon. They also have a DeviantArt page where they kind of put up a preview, image of what's to come or what they've posted. And first of all, I do want to apologize to Joanne16 for kind of being a little bit of annoyance. I mean, it's just that when you're a fan of these kind of things and stuff, and you see others that are fans as well, it kind of gets a little bit discouraging when you say one thing is going to happen, and then basically, it doesn't happen until later on. And what I mean by that is they basically told me and everybody else that by the end of this week or this past week is when the final part in the recent chapter, was going to be published. They basically alluded to the fact that it would be like around Saturday, but that wasn't the case. In fact, it wasn't even the case yesterday, which was Sunday and everything. Instead, it happened just about, I would say, 35 minutes ago at this time, or 40 minutes ago actually at this time. Right now it's 9:43 in the morning on this Monday. So yeah, it basically took a lot longer, and I can understand, because I mentioned this to Jovian16 and others, that I get that life can get in the way. There's other commitments, and you can end up being a little too busy to be able to concentrate on trying to get something done or uploaded to those that are supporting you on the in the time you want it to be up there. So I get that, so I get and understand that there's a little bit of frustration there. Not a problem. I mean, honestly, I'm trying to work on basically a sequel to Blue Quill 68's Queen's Delight story. Basically do a little sequel to that, and it's taking me time because I'm trying to think about what to come up with next, and also the fact that, as I've alluded to in previous videos, audios, and all that, I live with my mom, so her being a power warrior of a Christian, if you will, like I am, a born again Christian, trying to write these kind of stories to come up with ideas. You don't want a chance that they might want to come into your room and ask you to do something, and then maybe they take notice of what you're doing or something. But anyway, I do understand that, and I do want to apologize to them for acting that way. But as far as Amanda and Nicole goes, this has been going on for at least, I would say, several years. I mean, it's at the 11th chapter now, so I'm going to assume that's been going on for about, on average, almost 2 years, almost, maybe more. Mainly because of the fact that, Jovian16, like Trouble TRO and others, have other projects they're working on. And I'm assuming that they have schedules that they have to go by to make sure they get these projects done in a timely manner. But going back to Amanda and Nicole, like I said like I kind of alluded to in the web recommendation, it's one of these webcomic stories that you just have to look at and enjoy. Just, kind of kick back and kind of see where it progresses from there. And also, if you're into that kind of stuff as well, it's a lot fun. It's very fun to see how creative the mindset of the writer, the author, can get when it comes to trying to figure out what scenarios to put the characters in. And as I've mentioned before in the web recommendation that I did coming home from the bus stop here in Newman one night after being dropped off, because I take the bus from work to Patterson to Newman, I basically talked about, kind of gave a recap of who these characters are. Amanda and Nicole are basically, two characters that discovered this spell book that gave them these powers to shapeshift into whoever or whatever they want. And basically, long story short, they become different people. They become fantasy creatures, even in their sleep. And they even, basically become celebrities so they can sneak into different, places that normally, wouldn't, people like us wouldn't be allowed to sneak into because it's celebrities only or high class people only. And basically in the recent chapters and everything, as I mentioned in the web recommendation, they ended up disguising themselves as two, I guess you could say, adult entertainment celebrities. And they decided to go their own separate ways and have a little fun before meeting up again unbeknownst to each other. And by meeting up again unbeknownst to each other and going to a hotel, only to find out as one's, I think it's Nicole showing off the powers or something like that, only for them to kind of basically find out that they've reunited, surprisingly, unexpectedly with each other. Because, basically the thing about these shape-shifting stories, depending on how they're written, is that the person that turns into whoever or whatever they want basically gets so into it, so in tune with the character that they become, that it almost becomes hard and indistinguishable for them to basically, acknowledge, that the other friend that has the similar powers is right in front of them. That basically becomes hard for the friend that has the similar powers to even know, oh, that's my friend, and in that disguise or something like that. It becomes basically kind of weird for them. But anyway, they do, like I say, meet up, find out that they've reunited because, again, like I say, one of them shows off the powers. They have a little bit of a role play, intimacy, fun, to the point that they decide, at least I think it's Nicole. I think it's Nicole that decides to basically, she decides to make her latex outfit, her faceless latex outfit, an extension of her body. And she uses the extension of her body, these tendrils, tentacles, whatever you want to call them, to cover Amanda. She decides to cover Amanda in her essence, basically in her gooiness, thus making Amanda into a clone of Nicole. I think that's who's the one that does it. And then Amanda enjoying, actually embracing and enjoying what's happened, because, not only she become like a twin to Nicole, a clone, and sounding like her, but basically she decides she wants to really thank Nicole, because if it wasn't for Nicole, basically being brave enough to, try these powers out, when at first she was a little nervous, and that's being an encouraging source to Amanda to continue doing it as well. Amanda then decides to kind of thank her in a way that, as I mentioned before in a previous video, is an obvious direction that a lot of folks felt that they were going to go. And that's where the recent chapter continues off. The recent chapter, or the recent part to the chapter that's, ending with this part, leaves off. Basically, Amanda starts to merge. She starts to merge, sink into Nicole and everything. They start kind of getting all gooey and liquidy and whirlwind-like and everything, until you kind of see like a little bit of an explosion. Not a explosion where they splat all over the room and all that, but no, it's kind of like an influx explosion to where basically the end result is a fusion. That's right. It's a fusion. Basically, Amanda, she thanks her for letting her, get very intimate with her, allowing them to have these powers and all that. But then even suggests, as they're doing this, what could be better than two of us having, individually having these powers? What could be better than if not, merging them together? Like, basically she's pointing out like the potential of what could be, the potential of, individually, the powers are great, but what happens if they could join them together and become a sorceress? That's right. They fuse into a sorceress, and then basically, I think it's Amanda that suggests, at the end, because even Nicole's now intrigued in it, and she's even enjoying it. Amanda then suggests, at the conclusion, to let the thoughts join as one, and that it's time, and that basically Amanda suggested Nicole. So, like I said, Nicole gets into it and actually is surprised and loving, what Amanda has come up with. Amanda then suggests to let their thoughts merge into one. The thoughts come together as one, and to show and as a sorceress, to show the city what true power is about. So essentially, Amanda and Nicole, for the time being, are pretty much non-existent. I mean, Amanda said it best. After they merge, let the thoughts join as one. In other words, let them become one person, and that's it. In other words, Amanda and Nicole are now no more, are basically non-existent for the time being. Now, I'm sure over time, depending on how much longer the story goes, they'll figure out a way to get them back to normal. They'll find a way to get them back to normal, kind of get them separated. But it looks like, from what I'm understanding, because Jovian16 has been always known to do this kind of stuff. He's even done it, or they've even done it, with NanoShift, in the way that chapter and part concluded. They always like to leave you on a cliffhanger as to wondering what's next. And unlike with NanoShift's conclusion, at least you get pretty much an idea of where they are gonna go with this story once they continue it next year sometime. And that's the one benefit I will give them. That when you basically conclude, a certain part of or a certain, act in the story arc, the overall story arc, when you conclude a certain act, if you will, and you leave it somewhat on a cliffhanger, it does get people intrigued and wondered about what's next. What's the next step? Where do these characters go from here, right? And to me, Amanda and Nicole, like I said, this story arc, for the next act is going to get really interesting because, again, I see where they're going with this. And what's going to happen, I'm just going to speculate it out there. What's going to happen is Amanda and Nicole are probably going to want to separate, but the new entity that they've merged into, that they've allowed the thoughts to join into, is going to be more dominant than they expect. In other words, it's going to basically what I'm trying to get at, basically what they've done is, even at the behest of Amanda saying, hey, let our thoughts join as one, what they've unbeknownstly done is create a new sentient being. A sentient being that the longer they remain this way, basically the more they will lose themselves and definitely become non-existent, period. So to me, I think that's what's probably in the works. Like, that's probably one of the ideas they're messing around with for the continuation of the story sometime next year, where basically Amanda and Nicole are going to want to separate, because maybe they need to be with their families, or the families might be concerned or something like that. And the new entity that they become is not going to allow them to do it, because now it is basically the dominant force. It basically, because them joining together, it has become the dominant force. And, basically that's more powerful than them. Again, that's just spitball speculation as to where I think this could go. But seeing the fusion happen, though, again, it's like I said in the previous video, it was obvious, basically that this would be the direction they would go. It'd be very obvious. I mean, because from what I've seen, how many stories, with a few exceptions here and there, how many stories where the female characters, and I say with all due respect, no offense, the female characters that get these powers, how many stories have we read, dialogue-wise, script-wise, fan fiction-wise, or even read and looked at webcomic-wise? How many of these stories done by us, by us individual people, us fans, us folks that do it for free or for fun, how many of them have basically, when they involve this kind of a story with these characters, with these powers, how many of them have not gone this route? Even if it's to conclude one part or conclude one act of an overall story arc, or to end a story in, indefinitely, or basically end, this story, this little story arc on a happy note or something. How many of us have seen that, if not done that ourselves? A lot of us. So for Jovian16 to do this, I think it was obvious the moment. Not only, when they got the powers for the first time, but it really became obvious when basically Nicole decided to go, or when Nicole decided and then suggested to Amanda to go all full faceless latex and everything. That's when we should have known something was up. Because a good example is Mr. Internet Man's Walk on the Wild Side. Mr. Internet Man did this webcomic based on his character Demonica and Minor Dash Alterations' Ruby Walker character. And basically, long story short, Demonica basically used the weekend that Ruby took off as a little bit of a vacation to give Ruby an idea of what having these powers are like. And basically, Ruby had essentially in story become a fan of the gooiness, basically the liquidy meltiness. And thus, Demonica Veronica decided to give her a taste of that. And the end result was them basically fusing together into a faceless, amnesia-like, unidentifiable being who basically cared more about, the powers that they had and the possibilities they could have with the powers. Basically, that's what this reminds me of, somewhat. But the only difference is we actually see the end result. We see the fusion that they've become. And leaving it off on that way, making you speculate, okay, what's going to happen to Amanda and Nicole in the future? Now that there's one entity, how long is it going to last? Is this entity going to become the more dormant persona, taking over and everything? What's going to happen? And again, I got to give credit to Jovian16 for doing that, because again, it makes you wonder. It makes you speculate. With Nano Shift, again, I'll admit, with Nano Shift, yeah, the ending does make you wonder what's going to happen next with the J character, but we haven't seen or heard anything from that in a while, and it makes you wonder if even Jovian16 is trying to figure out, okay, where do I go from here, because of the way they ended that. Here, the difference with the way they ended Amanda and Nicole's act, this second or third act, if you will, with chapter 11, part 20, you basically have a better sense of where he's going, and in a way where they're going. And for Jovian16, it gives them a better sense of where they're going to go next with the characters and the story, unlike with Nano Shift, because again, that one ended in a way like, okay, where do you go from here? How do these new off-panel characters that are showing up going to play? What role are they going to play? What happens to Jay and everything? So basically the difference, like I said, is at least with Amanda and Nicole's ending, you have an idea, and Jovian16 has an idea of what the next step potentially could be. Well, with Nano Shift, and I say with all due respect, no offense, that's kind of like up in the air, because where do you go from that ending? You know what I'm saying? But I do recommend, though, guys, like I said before, I do recommend you guys check this out. I know you can find various other ways to look at it. I know other people that are Patreoning him right now are probably, downloading the PDF file, the images, and then going to put them up, at certain websites so you can get them for free. I get that, and that's not the best way to see it. But again, if you want, there are those possibilities. But me, I'm more of a support the artist, financially, so you can get more stuff like this. But again, if you do want to, check it out, I do recommend supporting them. But again, knowing how the internet works nowadays, it's going to be out there no matter what, you know. But yeah, I highly recommend you guys check it out. You know, check it out, give them support there, because the more you support artists like this, the more not only are they going to be able to get better software, but the quicker they'll be able to get out these stories a lot faster over time. But that's all I really want to say, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Comment if you like. Love to hear from each and every one of you. Live chat during the premiere. This will also be on my BW Rosa's Discussions podcast as a podcast itself. And until next time, guys, I will talk to y'all later. Also, support the Teespring store. Go over there for merchandise just in time for the holiday season for your family and friends. And until next time, guys, I am out.